Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 67 of the Hunger for the Hustle podcast. My third guest today, Ryan Sawyer, is an author of his brand new book called Choice Point, Breaking the Cycle of Self-Sabotage, Accelerate Your Growth, and Realize Your True Potential. Ryan is a licensed coach of many disciplines, almost too many to name here, but I'm sure we'll get into all of them. He is driven to help others on their path to self-realization and unlocking their full potential. Ryan, it's a pleasure to welcome you to the show. How are you this evening?
I'm doing excellent. Thank you for having me. It's always exciting to connect with like-minded people, so I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't agree more. And, I do have quite a few coaches on this show, but I don't think I've had anyone that is so qualified in so many different ways of coaching. I know you qualified in yoga, in some of these things. I'm not even sure what they are, so I'm really excited to learn about them, actually. Oxygen Advantage coach, certified Q processor facilitator, licensed unbeatable mindset coach. So how did that journey of being a coach start? How long have you been doing it, and when did it get going?
Well, qualified is a very strong word, first of all. Now, those are certifications. No, I never really intended to be someone who got all these certifications. But when I embarked upon this journey of wanting to really understand the mind and understand kind of how the whole just mind-body system was working and how to maximize my performance and overcome myself and just really deep dive into transformation. And, one thing led to the next. Next thing I know, I was like, holy cow, I got 6 certifications. And, right now I'm actually toying with a 7th and an 8th. But, that's never really the point. One of the pieces that I found when I started to kind of dive into certain type of work, like, for example, the Q process facilitator piece. We won't have to go too far into this, but it's shadow work. And I'm nowhere near any sort of therapist or anything like that, but it is a 21-day journaling process that I was fascinated by. And that I had massive success by doing this 21-day process of releasing some limiting beliefs about myself and really just experiencing life in a completely different manner. That I wanted to see what was behind the scenes. I wanted to understand it to a deeper extent so I could deepen my own practice, right? And so that's where it all started. Was the yoga certification was to go and have an experience in person and understand it from a level to where then I could bring it back home and deepen my own personal practice. And that was really what the whole certification after certification piece was all about in the beginning. And then I got to a place where I was like, well, if I just keep all this content and information and knowledge to myself, I'm kind of being selfish. So that, there was a point in time where, it turned into a book, and that idea turned into a coaching program and a speaking, program or a speaking career. And now I do workshops and all kinds of different things. But it was just been a natural evolution, to be honest with you. It's just been natural. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess when you start with something and you find you enjoy it, it often snowballs. And then, perhaps when you start helping others, that brings more energy to the situation. So there's nothing quite like doing something that you love and other people getting value back from it. So it doesn't surprise me at all that you got certified in so many things. Why not? If you're enjoying it, quite frankly, more strings to your bow, the better. More people you can help in different areas.
Yeah, and that's a great way of putting it too. It's funny. I spent the majority of my life not really thinking I was someone who enjoyed learning, and so when I kind of untapped the whole idea of like human potential and performance and mindset and the idea of what we call spiral dynamics and understanding how we evolve as human beings, basically, like I became fascinated. I mean, it's just like, if I don't know if I would have been fascinated at this at 15 or 20 or 25 years old, but at 35, 38, these, middle-aged type age, I just love it. And it's the only thing I really like to study or talk about or read and so it's become a way of life at this point. Yeah.
That's brilliant. I think that's really interesting that you say you weren't someone who liked learning. I guess when you're at school, whatever you're told to learn this, and you're told that this is the book, you read the book, you recite the book, and if you can recite it well enough in an exam format, then you pass the test.
Right.
You're given what you have to learn. It's not a choice of yours. But when you might take your own choice into what to learn, then it really becomes into its own, and actually you enjoy it a lot more. That's something I'm echoing my own journey when I say that back to you. I can tell you that for sure, because I was not a good student at all. In fact, I can remember a report card saying, Jacob knows how to do the work, but he just does not apply himself.
Yeah.
that was a general premise.
I think that's a lot of our stories. That's a lot of our stories.
For sure. So let's get into some challenges that you've had along the way. I always like to dive into challenges on this podcast. Of course, it's for people that are wanting to, the audience thinking about getting into their own business, perhaps already have their own business and are looking for some help, some guidance, some room to grow. But in talking about the challenges in that, we all have them. They're the real points I find where you have to dig deep, where you have to grow, where you have to, find the skills inside yourself to get past those things.
Yeah, I love that. When that question comes to mind, it's really hard for me not to just go straight to the idea that, in 2014, I was a collegiate football coach. My last life, I was, I spent 12 years in the college ranks of being a football coach in American football. And 2014 is when it all came to an absolute breaking point, because my wife found me curled up in the ball in the corner of the room having a massive anxiety attack. And at that point in time in my life, I had not told anybody that I had spent a lifetime in a place of anxiety and depression. I had hid it. I had suppressed it. I had avoided it. I had distracted myself. I had become a master of disguise. And even my wife at the time, we had 2 young, beautiful babies, and she had no idea what was happening in my own psyche and what was going on. So she looked at me and goes, "What are you doing?" And I was like, you finally caught me type, caught red-handed, And so that led to conversation after conversation. We finally, beginning to actually verbalize this fact that, I was battling really for my life with depression. And I recognized that I couldn't continue to be a collegiate football coach, be a father, overcome myself, understand what was going on, and all these, and live the life that I really wanted to live. Of what I recognized at the time, I didn't know it, but I wanted to live a very balanced life. And being a college football coach in America, there's no balance to that. I mean, it's a wonderful lifestyle if you're single, but a married man, it's hard to be a father and to really be all in that profession. So there's a lot of guys who do it and do it well, but I wanted to be home more than that job was allowing me to be. So, I started to really kind of uncover and do some work and try to figure pieces out, and, got into the physical transformation and lost a bunch of weight. I was, 70 pounds heavier or so than I am today at that point in time. And, so I went down that whole path of changing a lot of different things from my habits and drinking and gambling and everything else that I liked to do before those days. And that's really the path that I was on. When I left coaching, it didn't get better. It got worse. I continued to kind of seek outside of myself for approval. I wanted some sort of recognition or sense of of feeling like I wasn't alone, right, in this battle, right? So looking for acknowledgement of some kind. And I led myself down a path of always trying to push myself physically and things like that. And eventually found myself in a sticky situation where I was in an emotional affair with another woman. Now my marriage is even more on the rocks than it was before. And so really had to just absolutely push pause on who am I, man? I mean, what's really going on here? And to wake up and to recognize that I have created this mess. I've created this mess in my own head. I've created this mess in my marriage. I've created this mess. And so if I created it, then shit, why can't I untangle it? one thing at a time, one thought at a time, one behavior at a time. And actually truly, legitimately, completely rewire myself to a different experience. Like I started to study epigenetics and neuroplasticity and cell reproduction. And I started to dive into Dr. Joe Dispenza's work and got into meditation, which led me to the next thing, to the next thing, the next thing, right? And really now have a pretty dang good understanding of how the mind works, how to train it through breath, through visualization, through positive self-talk. That goes much deeper than just, hey, I can do it, but there's a lot to that. And I just recently, just about an hour ago, got done with a course that I'm doing online that teaches all these pieces of the puzzle of basically mindfulness, of resiliency, of mental toughness, and how to overcome and rewrite our stories, rewrite the narratives of our lives. And so that struggle was real. There was a very dark place in my life where there were suicidal thoughts and I recognized that, it was either give up or fight, and one of my main motivations at the time when I was going through that was, hey, listen, I have this, at the time, a 2-year-old son, and I could see my suffering and my vibration being an impact on his life already at that age. I could just see it. I could just sense it, mm-hmm. And I was hell bent to make sure that if this was not something I could beat, at least I was going to understand it. At least I was going to understand it so that I could have tools and I could help him. If he had to experience the same thing, I could help him navigate it so I could have answers. Because when I started to ask questions when I was a young kid, at all, like in that manner of looking for any sort of support, I didn't get any answers. Zero. Right? Even from a health professional. It was, they wanted to just put me on medication. The times that I did go to a doctor or this or that or the other, there wasn't solutions. There was just more answers to my problems. It was just more problems, in my opinion, And so that's really what led me. That's where it all started. I didn't seek leaving coaching to become a coach. Like that was not my goal, and I even was hell bent that I would never go down that path again. But like I said, a couple of years down the road later, after completely kind of just reshaping my life and rewiring myself to a different experience, I realized, okay, wait a minute. I did this for myself. I untangled this mess. There's a lot of people suffering in the world unnecessarily. And that's really my passion in life at this point, is to help people to untangle the unnecessary suffering and to be able to then recreate themselves. And what I have recognized, Jake, is that whether you're overcoming some sense of obstacle or despair or limiting belief about yourself, or you're trying to reshape your life into becoming a high performer and making a larger impact, an entrepreneur, or whatever that looks like for you, like the tools are exactly the same, right? So to take yourself out of the gutter or into a much higher perspective of life, like the tools are the same. Path is the same.
Yeah, it's just applying them in different ways. And thanks for being so honest, open, and transparent about your challenge there. It's one heck of a story that you went through there. What was the kind of time frame of that whole thing from you, from your wife finding you there to you now being to where you're at now? Like, how many years ago was that?
Well, when she found me, that was like 2014. So that's about 6 years.
Yeah. What a journey. I think one thing that you touched on there was that, at that time you were in a real pretty dark place, pretty low place. You said you'd even had some suicidal thoughts, and you actually saw that vibration, that energy, being picked up by just your 2-year-old son. I think that's something that people don't always understand and appreciate, that, children from the ages of pretty much 0 to 5 years old are just like sponges in terms of energy and atmosphere and everything that's going on around them. And you think, oh, well, they can't really understand what I'm saying because they don't have good verbalization and stuff yet, but they sure do in another sense, in the energy sense, and they're absorbing all of the stuff that's going on around them.
No, it is. The more I have learned now, the more I am insanely grateful that I left and did what I did when I did it, because it gives my kids a chance to not be so impacted by that time. And there is already probably some impact there because of that vibration. Like you say, they take on everything. whether it be just messaging or how our cells reproduce in each moment. Like our cells are reproducing, millions of cells are reproducing with the signature of whatever it is, whatever vibration we're in the present moment, whether it be doubt and fear and despair and anxiety and depression. If we're in those states, our cells are just reproducing with that signature, right? And we're basically predicting our future to have more of that because of we're allowing ourselves to be there, right? And it's just it's just the nature of how we are made up as humans. And so, and not only that, but there are how our brains are wired, how they kind of wire and fire, right? And so the more we feel that way, the more we're going to then potentially feel that way more in the future. So to recognize with every moment that you shift your state towards a different emotional outcome of joy, peace, and abundance and prosperity and whatever that looks like for you, right? Of just presence, then you know that you're creating more of that for yourself. Like you are attracting more of that just for your own experience in the future, more gratitude, whatever that may be. So it's like this moment by moment awareness and practice to like take full responsibility. Like I'm not saying that, it's my fault that here I am, but it is my responsibility to take the reins and to shift my state in any present moment. If I don't want to feel that way, allow myself to feel it, release it without judgment, and then let's go. Let's shift it to where I want to go. Whether that's putting on a music track that makes you feel different or doing meditation or breath work that shifts your state, but we are 100% in control of how we feel at each present moment. And we're going to be attracting more of whatever we experience,
Absolutely right. And talking about switching energy up, I can feel the energy of this conversation is changing already. So let's go from that challenges stage to some triumphs, to some points that you've had as being, not the old coach, the new coach, that you were like, yes, this is me. This is what I do. This feels great. And this is why I do it.
Yeah. I can just go off of a recent experience where I was in a room with 27 young cadets who are trained to become police officers here in Spokane, Washington, and going through a 4-hour workshop where I'm teaching them these tools that have shifted my life and that have gained perspective and gave me a sense of mindfulness and helped me develop the ability to navigate stress and to overcome and to visualize my future self of being strong and confident and all these different pieces of the puzzle, and to see their wide eyes they were in the phase of testing. It was actually just this last Thursday where they're getting ready to do these mock-up testing, situation testing things. And they were about as puckered as a room as I've ever been in, when it comes to like, it's an important thing. And man, it means something to them. And for me to come in and spend 4 hours with them and to give them tools and then to get some of the feedback that I've gotten, even just in the last few days from them, it's so gratifying. And, it just feels like all of that suffering that I was exposed to is for a reason. Like now I get it. Now I have a story that allows for me to be relatable, that allows for me to be, approachable. And then therefore I can speak from that place. I can speak like I've been there. I know what it feels like. And I know that you can overcome it because I did. Right. And so it just adds so much context to my life. It's just so much more color than winning or losing a football game. And that was a wonderful life, but this is about actually like legitimately changing people's lives, changing the outcomes of people's lives and helping them do that for themselves. All I'm doing is teaching tools. I may occasionally challenge somebody if they have a limiting belief or things of that nature, but majority of what I do is just helping you put tools in your tool bag to navigate life, the unknown, right? So when that moment's come up, you don't need me. You got your tool bag, and I can help you build those practices, build that awareness, and use those tools to be able to navigate the unknown. Because we're all living in the unknown right now, right? The whole world is, right?
Oh, yeah, that's for sure. I'm sat here like a nodding dog, particularly when you said about you teaching people the mental toolbox almost, and for them tools to be at the top of their toolbox. I have an analogy about that. I moved from England to Australia 5 years ago, and something I talk about, I do a little bit of public speaking, is about the mental toolbox that you need to actually move and emigrate to another country and be a success there, and not just to actually do it, but to stay there. And I talk about, I'm also a plumber as well. I've been a plumber for many years, but you develop a mental toolbox, and just like you are as a plumber, you have certain tools that you always have near the top of your box because you know you're going to need them regularly. And I talk about building up this mental toolbox of things you're going to need when you you could apply it to anything, but in this concept, it's moving to another country, and you're going to need patience, you're going to need persistence, you're going to need determination, mental resilience. So yeah, I think it's a really good analogy to say a mental toolbox, because a lot of people, particularly anyone that's ever worked in construction or even done a bit of DIY around the home, they'll be able to instantly identify with what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love those. Creating what I hear from what you just said there is like basically creating a personal philosophy or a stand. Like here are the character traits that I, am going to live by, to make sure that I'm able to use this as like a filtration system for my thoughts, my words, and my actions, right? So as I'm going through transition in life, and this is one of the pieces that I love to coach people in, is when they're in a transition, they're going from one job to another. And maybe, I've never thought about that, but going from one country to the next, like that could be a scary situation, right? So then now how do I have a stronger sense of self, right? So then therefore I don't get derailed by my circumstances of life, right? So the stronger sense of self that I have, the more clear about what I am, what I stand for. When life happens, when I'm contacted by life, like I'm not nearly as affected, because I'm gonna use that as my filtration system for life. As it comes at me and it contacts me, this is who I am. Here I am. There that is. I'm not that. I'm not my thoughts. I am not my circumstances. Right. I'm experiencing them, but they aren't, I'm not identifying with them. I'm not attaching to them. I'm this pure witnessing observer essence over here, and that's happening over there.
That's a great way to look at it. A really interesting, resounding way to look at life. I really think it is.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about the word hustle. Of course, it features in the title of this podcast, Hunger for the Hustle. And I define hustle to be not having or seeing the circumstances that you desire, so going out and creating them. I'd love to know how you define the word hustle. And clearly you have a lot of hunger for it. So what's driven it over the years?
I have just recently realized, and I mean recently, in the last few months, realized that I love the unknown. I love to venture into the unknown, meaning like, all right, I'm going to develop this new business model. And I don't really have any idea where it's going to end up. There's going to be a ton of missteps and of trial and error and dipping my toe here and dipping my toe there. But I can't wait to see where we end up. I can't wait to see how we get there and what we learn along the way. And I think that is the piece that a lot of us miss, is we set out a goal and we hustle to reach the goal, right? To have the achievement, whether it be a certain amount of money or, to win a certain, in a sporting world, right? To win an event or to a championship or whatever. And we forget that the whole entire point of why we set out to do something hard or challenging is because who we become in the process. It's who I become by this experience, the people that I meet, the person how I'm influenced, the things that I read and discover about myself. And then the mental tools that I have to sharpen to actually do the thing that I'm setting out to do, to actually navigate the unknown, right? Like that's the hustle is the more that I put myself in hard situations, the more that I realize I have to sharpen those tools. I can't just have the tools. They're going to get rusty and caught up. And then when I pull them out, shit, they ain't even going to work. Right. You know what I mean? So I had this conversation just tonight with someone. Well, how do you do that when it's in a high performance situation where you don't have time to sit back and assess your thoughts? I'm like, well, you've preloaded the work. You've preloaded the work to such a level in your mind and your visualizations that you've prepared for whatever arises. So when the thing arises, you're so efficient with how you rewire your thoughts in that present moment when you get triggered by an obstacle or by a comment or by, whatever that may be, that you just instantly redirect your mind, your thoughts, your breath, your attention, and your focus towards a positive outcome. Like there's just no other way that your mind operates other than navigating toward the positive outcome. And so this is done through efficiency, is done through awareness, and it's done through repetition. It's done through practice. And the only way for me to really practice, when I say practice, it starts with in a seated position, potentially as a visualization, kind of like winning in our mind, right? But practice really happens when I take life on as my training ground, where every single thing that shows up in my life is an opportunity for me to grow. And so if I'm not out seeking those things to grow, then I'm not hustling, right? I'm not hustling to become a better version of myself so I can make a greater impact in the world, be of greater service. And, and to just have a different, one of the beautiful pieces selfishly is that every time that I grow, I get a different perspective of life. There's legitimately times, Jake, or the last few years when I'm doing something that I have done multiple times, whether it be going fishing with a friend or even just like having a date night with the wife and doing dishes or whatever it is, like we're making dinner at the house and having a glass of wine or whatever, that I'm like, this really almost feels like it's the first time doing it.
Wow. Yeah.
Because it's a different version of me doing it. Like such a degree and I believe this is possible for all of us, that we can go through life and that we can have one of two experiences. Like even science shows this at the age of 35 years old, that most of us aren't going to have very many new experiences. That the majority of everything that we're going to kind of experience in life, our thoughts, feelings, circumstances, how we perceive the world is pretty much fixed unless we intentionally go out and seek something new and unknown and navigate those obstacles to then create a different perspective of life, to actually challenge our thinking, to actually look at and go experience different cultures and taking on new belief structures and trying those things on so you can have a different perspective of life. If we don't intentionally do those things, then we're just going to relive the same old experiences over and over and over and over again. But I truly believe intentional living can lead us to a place where every year feels like this new adventure. Every time we go out to dinner with our wives can even feel something like it's almost like it's new, not like the old bag again, So
I love that. It's a great way to look at it. And you had me slightly concerned there because I'm 32 and I thought, well, I've got 3 years to experience all the things I'm going to experience before I recycle them. But then I realized that that's if you're just not seeking them. And I'm always seeking new experiences. This whole podcast thing I just started in September, and it's every I almost feel like every episode is a new experience sometimes, because of course it's different people, it's different perspectives, we're talking about different stuff, although it all relates to the same kind of narrative. I'm always seeking.
Yeah, and so you're naturally wired that way. That's a really powerful thing, but a lot of people, I almost said most, I don't know what the numbers is, I don't know what the percentage is, but a lot of people are not wired that way. And as we as humans are wired for comfort, right? And so comfort, the ego doesn't want to change. It wants to conserve as much energy as possible, right? And I think that's a trap that we have to be aware of. Like we're never going to be on firm ground. So the second that you feel like, I've made it, there's this plateau in life and I got this good job, life is cush, like I'm going to sit back and then, there's a moment there to pat ourselves on the back, but then get off your ass and get back to work and find the next challenge.
Yeah. Onwards, upwards, outwards all the time.
Yeah.
Just going to give a shout out to a guest I had on the podcast a couple of months ago, Malcolm Free on the side, who's loving what we're talking about and is giving us some real value. He says, it may or may not be my fault, but it is always my responsibility. And that is so true. Like just owning it in the moment and knowing that, okay, look, it might not have gone how I wanted it to go. And it may or may not be my fault. I may or may not be the result of why it happened, but it is my responsibility and my thing to take on and own. And then, that's authentic. People are always going to appreciate that, even if they're upset in the interim of what might have happened at the time. Going forward later, you'll always be able to say, I took ownership, I took responsibility, and that's authentic at the end of the day.
I love it.
I'd love to talk about your excuse me, your book, Choice Point.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us more about that. When did you write it? When was it released?
I kind of conceived of this idea a couple of years ago that I would start to tell the story. I recognized that I had done enough and learned enough that it was worth, at least, if nothing else, as a healing process for me to put it on paper, put it out to the world, have that first piece of content out there. And so March hit, COVID hit. I have a residential painting company. You said you're a plumber. So I have a painting company that I own and operate, and I'm not involved in the day-to-day as much anymore, but at the time that was still a source of income, it still is today. So that was non-essential, parked in the driveway for 2 months. My wife was an event coordinator. So COVID hit, she got fired. So within 2 weeks time, we went from 2 incomes, pretty darn comfortable, to going like, oh, whoa, this is real. What's going on here? Right. And so I looked at that as an opportunity really quickly to say, well, you know what? I've been wanting to write this book. I hired a writing coach, and in the next 30 days, I went for it. I hammered it out and wrote every day. And until I got a manuscript put together that I was semi-happy with. And so we launched that in August. August 27th was my birthday. And so we launched it on my birthday. And by the time we actually got it all edited and, all the steps that follow writing the manuscript, like that piece is the, what I have now learned is that's kind of the fun and easy piece. The rest of the process to actually get it up and publish is quite the journey. But, so that was more of a just, this was a wonderful opportunity to take this downtime that I didn't foresee having and do something positive with it, and telling the story of overcoming this depression and really highlighting kind of the awareness that went along with that journey. And I wanted to try to create a picture of what it's like to transform, like how it can potentially be uncomfortable, and kind of this cycle of transformation that I illuminated in the book, and how we have to let go and create what we call the void. The void is this place in our lives where we have to actually make space for a new thought, for new behavior, for new habits, and for new friends, even for new people in our life that are going to fit who we're becoming, right? So we have to create this void, and then we have to do the work. And the work is the moment by moment awareness of really just overcoming our negative tendency to and what our past conditioning is and beliefs about ourselves. And so we have to go through this process of kind of, overcoming ourselves. And then how, when we are beginning to release and beginning to create anew, the mind's always going to try to put you on a false ground, what we call a plateau or a false summit. And then this ability to fully integrate ourselves into a new experience of life. And so I kind of illuminate that process of transformation that I just through journaling when I left, when I began to kind of go down this path, I became a daily journal kind of guy. And so I'd write something down, even if it was just a few words. Some days I'd write for pages and pages and pages and pages, but other days I might just write one question down. Right. And so I've kept all those journals, went back through them all. And I noticed this pattern of me removing something from my life, me really working on myself, me feeling like there's this new experience. And then this moment of integration would happen where I'm like, oh, wow, I'm no longer that old person. Like I no longer, crave a beer on a Friday night. I no longer even realize that it's college football Saturday. I never even think about turning on a college football game because I've removed that from my life. Like I'm no longer that person now. here I am as this person, experiencing life differently. And then this coming back to this idea of a choice to like, okay, well, from this new perspective of life, what's next? Who else, what else is possible? What other area of my life can be potentially massaged or reworked or overcome or, made anew. So, that whole process. And then I illuminate some tools in the back of the book. Some basic, just, trying to really, the book for me was a book that was meant for my 35-year-old self that had never read a book in his life, right? And didn't want to learn anything new. So I tried to be kind of more of a door opener type book. Like, hey, listen, this is not going to be a deep dive, but this is going to just illuminate the path enough to where you might be curious to go ask another question someplace else. And that was the goal of the book. So.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. And I might have to get myself a copy because it seems like a fantastic book. And I like the way that you maximize the downtime there. This has been a great year to take advantage of this quiet time, to take advantage of this less distractions, less people to interact with, and perhaps even realize that, hey, actually, these people that I've not spent so much time around, maybe I don't need to spend so much time around them. And
your life is actually better because of it.
Yeah, definitely. And that pertains to places, things, all these things that you just caught up doing for years and years and years. A lot of them got taken away from us this year, and I think it gave us a space to realign, readjust, and think what was actually valuable to us in our lives, and what did we actually need, and what did we actually want, because they're two very different things.
I love that. I love those types of powerful questions. Yeah, I think it's something that we should be constantly asking ourselves, those basic questions of, is what I want actually what I need?
Yeah.
What can I let go of, right? And what's next for me, right? I mean, just some simple questions like that. I think it's so powerful.
Name of the book, Malcolm asked on the side. It's called It's called Choice Point, right? That's the name of the book.
Choice Point. That's right. Yeah.
Choice Point. How did you come up with the name I'm intrigued by the name.
As I was writing the book, the original title was going to be Chasing the Light, because it was this idea of transformation, right? And as I read the book back again, I recognized that I basically tried to illuminate this idea that, like, in each moment we have this choice to make. Like, there's something going on in our heads, and this idea of like being in this cycle of transformation where you have to make the choice to create something new before you can do anything else. There has to be the awareness that you even have a choice. And so it was just this, it was this topic that just kind of continued to percolate throughout the whole book. And so that, it just made perfect sense to just call it Choice Point. And I thought it was kind of catchy at the same time. So,
yeah, no, I think it works really well. Yeah. So we're getting to the end of this episode, and I really enjoyed spending some time with you, Ryan. It's been some great nuggets for myself, as I hope there has been for all the audience, whether they're watching now, live, or later. And if you have just joined this podcast at the 38th minute, you are going to need to pull it back and rewind, because there is some absolute gems. So make sure you capture the whole thing. I'm going to ask you, Ryan, 3 hot tips. If you were to give 3 hot tips to your 35-year-old self that was in that dark place, what would they be?
The first piece, if you're in a dark place, is that there is life outside of whatever it is you're experiencing. Like for me, there's life after football. Like you might be in a situation where, you're in a certain profession or whatever it is. And the idea of transitioning is scary because you don't know what it's going to look like on the other side, right? You don't know if you're going to be able to find happiness, or you don't know if you're ever going to be able to overcome this certain limiting belief about yourself or how the world views you. But the first piece is that we all have the power to create whatever version of ourselves that we want, whatever experience of life that we want to have. We just have to be able to actually be willing to walk through that river of change, right? So every single one of us can create a new version of ourselves. And so just to know that as a possibility is first and foremost. Like, we all have that power. The second piece is to find mentorship. Find somebody who has walked the path before you, whether that be in a book or a podcast or, a coaching program or hiring somebody or whatever that looks like for you. That could just be a friend, that has been down that path before you, that's maybe older than you, or an uncle or whatever it may be. But somebody that has a similar story, a relatable story, doesn't have to be identical, but somebody that has illuminated the path before you to say what worked, what didn't. How could you at least like shine a spotlight in a general vicinity for me, so I can begin my path, so I can start to walk and navigate, because each one of us has to create our own way, right? And how we connect the dots. I tell people a lot of times, it's like you have to have a machete. At some point, you're going to have to fight your way out of the jungle on your own. At some point, you're going to have to. And so that would be my third point, is just embrace the fact that you need to do your own work on you, like to look inward. And even for example, my wife and I, when our marriage was at an absolute breaking point, when I was basically standing in the kitchen with my wife and I said, I think I'm going to move out tomorrow. Like, this clearly does not stand a chance. And for whatever reason, long story short, we got hit with this download that we hadn't actually done the work, that we changed everything about our lives. We changed our jobs. We changed where we live. We both transformed our bodies. We lost a bunch of weight, blah, 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 blah. Like, all these things, all these circumstances about our life, all these stories about our lives, we changed all of them. But we hadn't changed ourselves. We hadn't done the internal work that it allowed for us to actually see each other for who we really were, where we were really going, and what was really possible, And so you have to be willing to do the work. You got to be willing to do the work. And the work doesn't have to be serious. Like, transformation can be fun. Like, imagine the best possible outcome for yourself, and then go to work to create that version of you.
I love that, man. I love that. I really do. I think that's a great way to look at things. Great perspective.
Yeah.
Tell me, as we close out, something. I'd love to know what you're reading at the moment.
I read about 5 or 6 books at once, because I bounce around a lot,
Yeah.
And to be honest, I mean, I have just in the last few months picked up the Bible for the first time, and so I'm navigating my way through that. I'm always studying something. So whether it be breath or something like that. So I have a book or two that's about kind of getting ourselves back to one's called Go Wild. That's about kind of getting ourselves back to nature, in the sense of how we move and being, going out into nature, and the things we eat, and how we breathe, and things of that nature like that. And then I like to always have something that's a little bit more spiritual too. And beyond the Bible, obviously, is Eckhart Tolle's book, A New Earth, is the book that I'm reading right now. And that one is extensive, it's long, and it's in depth, and it's a mind twister. I can only do a couple pages at a time. That's why I have to have multiple books, because this one will challenge you if you really go through and really study it. One of the things that I adopted about reading years ago was I vowed to not just read a book. I don't just read books, I study books. And so like I will usually pop on an audiobook, and if I like it, then I get the hard copy or the Kindle version, and then I study it. And I page by page, highlight, take notes, record my notes, type up my notes, refer back to them. One of the pieces of the puzzle that I think that, like I said, with doing the work, as a tip, is like nothing is obtained without practice. And I think so many times we get knowledge, but we don't actually apply it. And that can be dangerous because then we think we know. So it's no different than like, oh no, I read that book. Oh yeah, that book about, about this, that, or the other. But like, yeah, but did it actually change anything about your life? Because I don't see you implementing any of these ideas, principles, perspectives, or tools into your life. So what the hell's the difference? Like it doesn't actually do anything if we don't really adopt it and integrate it and try it on. And well, that's not for me. That is for me. You know what I mean? And so when I study books, when I go through books, I really try to study them. And when there's a question in the book, I actually stop and answer the question. You know how many times we're reading a book and there's a question, oh, I'll come back later. Like, no, you won't. No, you won't.
No, you're
stop
right.
and answer the question. Yeah.
And I think that's the same for, you mentioned Eckhart Tolle books there. I think all Eckhart Tolle books are there. You can only ever read perhaps at most a chapter at a time.
Yeah. They're powerful.
We got a question on the side here from Malcolm. I'll get this one up on the screen. Throughout your journey, how often do you reflect on your past?
I love that question. One thing that I have come to realize about going backwards in life in the sense of looking at your past is to learn something that I need to grow from or to heal. So I really don't look backwards very often. I'd say 80-90% of my energy is going forward and forward focused. But when I get caught up or hung up, or I notice a reoccurring trigger, no matter how small that trigger is, that's when I stop and go, okay, wait a minute. That trigger has happened to me 4 or 5 different times in this last week or this last month. Okay, so where is this actually coming from? Like, what is the root of that trigger? Where did in my life did I make that agreement with myself that that's who I am, or, how I operate? And what does that mean? Like, where did I feel that way before? Right. And so, I love to keep journals. This time of year specifically, I do a lot of vision work. So I will tend to like go back and reread visions that I've written in the past or, stuff that I've journaled about. But I really try to limit myself to be forward thinking as much as possible and only go back to learn from my past and or to grow or to heal. To heal from my past.
And perhaps do you ever look, sorry to go across, do you ever look back to see how far you've come?
And that's one of the pieces I think that's the most important reason why someone should journal, right? It's because our minds will forget what we have accomplished. Like it will only see where we are and where we need to go. Like we'll always have this kind of sense of lack because we're always trying to get to the next plateau, right? But there is no there. There is no finish line per se. So, to be able to occasionally go back and be like, oh, wow, look at that. Like a year ago, this is where, and 2 years ago, wow, those types of things. And so I do think that that's a powerful reflection occasionally, but it's really only a couple times a year that I will intentionally go back in that manner. And then again, like I said, when I notice a reoccurring trigger in my life, whether something makes me feel sensitive or something makes me feel hurt, something makes me feel irritated on a reoccurring basis, then I'm like, okay, there's something there that needs to be healed. Because I believe that if we are completely whole and we have learned to let go and surrender these limiting aspects of ourselves, so we should be able to go through a day and not be disturbed. Like I have that experience of how far I've come from legitimately like going through my day was an irritable, friction resistant experience. Right. And to now go through my life where I can go days without feeling really much resistance at all. And so other than the resistance that I impose upon myself because I'm seeking a new challenge. So when there is something as simple as even a road rage or your wife triggers you by something that she says or does or whatever it is, like there's something there for us to look at. Like that's a little tally mark to say, okay, wait a minute. Like there's something there that can be healed about us, right? We can go back and rewrite an old narrative, or we can just let go of a story, that no longer serves us. It may have kept us safe when we were 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18 years old, whatever it may be, but it has no bearing at 43 years old today, where I am today, right? You know what I mean? So
yeah, totally. So many nuggets, so many gems. I'm going to have to watch this one back myself. You've genuinely taught me a lot here, particularly with the things that you said about when things repeatedly come up and they trigger you, looking at the reasons behind that, and there's some healing to be done there, and what is the work to be done. That's something I'm really going to take note of and work on. So thank you for that. Thank you for your time and energy here on the podcast. I'm going to drop your links where people can find you in the comments here, but do you just want to tell the audience where is the best place to find and connect with you if people want to buy the book or of course, engage in your services?
Yeah, so the book is on Amazon, Choice Points on Amazon, obviously. And IHP Coaching is the name of our business. IHP stands for Integrated Human Performance. So we're on Facebook and Instagram, and ihpcoaching.com is our website where we have our services listed, workshops, and we have things that we're doing online. And so, yeah, we're happy and ready to serve anybody who's interested to learn more.
Fantastic. Ryan, thanks so much for spending this time with me. I've really enjoyed it. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and it's probably heading up to bedtime, isn't it? So
it's bedtime. Yeah, I get up. It's bedtime. So I appreciate you, Jake. This has been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. My pleasure. Take care. Bye-bye.